The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. That could be you breaking into your first role in advertising, that first job. It could be for the mid-levels looking to break through that next promotion, or for those marketing professionals that are looking to break in and find their next agency partner to work with. And we do this every single week by interviewing the best of the best in advertising and sharing their stories and advice from the other side. In this episode, you're going to hear from Marcus Fisher. Marcus Fisher is the CEO of Carmichael Lynch. We'll talk about his journey into advertising, Carmichael Lynch's agency culture, how they're on best places to work listings from various publications, and the vision for the future. We kick it off and we talk about how he transitioned from a background in public policy to account planning through persistence and a bit of an unconventional networking approach, which I always love to hear on this show. Carmichael Lynch has worked with some amazing brands. Some of their key clients historically have been Subaru, and they've also worked on Harley-Davidson. Their culture is their differentiator. Their initiatives like the Founders Grant, which supports employees' entrepreneurial passions, that spoke to me, but you can also tell that it's working, that this culture keeps people there for the long term, they enjoy it, and they want to create great work. What else do we talk about? His advice for aspiring strategists. This episode is phenomenal for you all. If you want to get into strategy, he talks about how you should think outside of just advertising, developing those personal passions and growing those to help you seem more attainable to recruiters. I'll leave it at that. You're going to want to connect with Marcus. You're going to want to learn more about Carmichael Lynch and their internship, which should be opening right around the time this podcast airs, early in 2025. To do that, I recommend you connect with him on LinkedIn. Listen to the end of the episode. He'll talk about how you connect. And you can always reach out to me. Follow me on LinkedIn, leave a note on LinkedIn, and I'll do my best to connect you with Marcus or any of our past guests. If you like what you hear, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review. This helps us get better and better guests every single week and continues to run the show. Now, on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, and as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right. Marcus Fisher, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How the heck are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Of course. Excited to have you on. The CEO of Carmichael Lynch is a big deal. I'm a little nervous, so bear with me here as I stumble through questions. But we will be talking about you, Marcus, what it's like to be the CEO at Carmichael Lynch, the vision of the company, and of course, your advice for the next generation and maybe some mid-level professionals that are out there too listening. How does that sound for a run of show?
Sounds great.
Cool. So let's kick it off at the top. Who is Marcus Fisher? Where are you at? Where do you live? What do you like to do? Give me the rundown. I see you got Purdue on.
Yep. I'm a conflicted family. I got Purdue and Indiana. I got kids of both.
Which one do you like better? Which?
Yeah. No, let's see. So, my name is Marcus. I live in Minneapolis. Carmichael Lynch is based here. We also have an office in Philadelphia. And then we have probably another 75 people that are remote. So all around the country. So yeah, in terms of, in terms of background, I've been kind of nice. I've lived in Minnesota, for, approaching 30 years now. Never thought I'd live here. We actually, when I moved up here, it was, I thought we'd be here 2 years and out. And it's been 3 kids 30 years later. And, especially in this business, you switch jobs so much, you move around so much. We've been very fortunate to be able to just be in one place.
Got it. So what brought you there originally? Was it for work?
No, funny story, actually. So I never set off to be in this business. My wife and I moved up here. We went back to grad school, and she got her degree in social work, and I got mine in public policy and public administration. So I was supposed to be kind of working for nonprofits, municipalities, and we moved up here because it's a very progressive place, a very kind of liberal, forward thinking, and so for public policy and social work, it seemed like the perfect place. We'd never been. We didn't have jobs. We had a crappy Dodge Neon and a insane cat, and moved up here kind of on a whim. Yeah, and then like I said, and then 30 years later, we're still here.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we'll definitely unpack that. But first, I still want to learn more about Carmichael Lynch as the agency, and you're the CEO here. So, can you tell me about Carmichael Lynch today, and maybe some of the clients that you have, or some recent work that you're proud of? You mentioned office in Philadelphia and Minneapolis, so that's great context too. But for the listeners that want to learn more, what else do you know that you can give us information on?
Sure. I guess some of the basic facts. So we were founded in 1962. So we've been around for quite a while. We're about 350 people. Our signature accounts over the years, we've been doing work with Subaru for the last 17 years, which is probably some of our most famous work, just because it's also had such a long runway. And otherwise, historically, we had done work with Harley-Davidson for 30 years. We did work. Actually, Jack Lynch and Sasquatch was born here. So
Nice.
So that entire piece, I guess some of the really unique things, and obviously I'm biased on it, but what I'm incredibly proud of this place is we are a truly integrated agency. And what I mean by that is we have media, we have PR, we have design, we have all those disciplines that normally most agencies have to find partners for. We have it baked in. And so that kind of you can kind of see that in the work that we do, the work that we hold in the highest regard. You have no idea if it's meant to be an ad, a PR idea, a design idea, where it comes from. So it allows us to bring all those different disciplines to a business problem and an idea. And so that's where and why we have, just as our positioning and mantra, come together to stand apart. And that really is, we bring all the different disciplines together to stand apart. And that's how we've approached things. And it's been a really interesting thing, especially over the last couple of years, as the economy gets tighter, budgets get smaller. We're purpose built for those clients that are looking for an agency partner that has, look, here's my business problem. Bring whoever you want to the party. We are your partner. I'm your partner, and let's go figure this out.
Got it. Yeah, I didn't know like some of those iconic brands like Harley and Jack Lynx you guys worked on. That's incredible stuff. Those are some big brands, and I've also seen you guys listed on accolades. I believe like the A list of some sort, maybe Ad Age recently. So congrats to you all. It must be working pretty well.
Yeah, we've been fortunate enough, especially in the last 5 years, kind of pandemic and post-pandemic, really, really proud of the fact that we are on agency A lists in terms of best places to work on a regular basis. Because to me, one of the things that I try to focus on the most is our culture. Because we actually look at our culture and our people as a real point of difference. And actually, we talk about it in new business pitches all the time. So being the best places to work means that we're able to hire the best people, keep the best people, and therefore we also have the responsibility to get some of the best brands and assignments for people to work on. And so we look at that as a way to tell clients, like, look, we have really low turnover. We have an environment where people want to come to work because we can do the best kind of work. And, as hard as it is to maintain agency cultures right now, we do look at that as a huge point of pride and piece of difference for us.
It's all about the people. I've learned interviewing 350 plus people, never missing a week over the past 5 years. This industry, I hear these different mantras and reasons they exist, and they're all fantastic, but it really comes down to the people that make up the agency that are coming up with the ideas. Do they get along? Do they have a good time? Do they have good balance? Because the ideas are coming from these humans. And that is also steered by the leadership and the vision and the culture that you guys put forward. And of course, do you listen, and are employees able to uh, uh, to change the system if it needs to, and to have a say in that. And it seems like if you're winning on these awards and getting these honorifics, then it should be working. But I want to know specifically then, like, what are some of those culture components that you've initiated or you guys have been operating for a while that you're really proud of that gets you on these lists? What are some of those things?
Sure. I think there's always a few things, but we look at our culture as culture is an investment, not an expense. And I think that is kind of key and central to everything we do.
Mhm.
So oftentimes we'll look at things that way, and we'll actually look, you've got a certain amount of discretionary money. We will overinvest in our culture because we think it pays back in multiple fold. And so, but it's also the right thing to do because we want to make sure we attract the right kind of people. This is a hard business. And if we're going to have a hard business, we should also make it as enjoyable, fun, rewarding, growth. We want people to come here and do the best work of their career. There's a very tangible thing that I do, which, at the risk of not sounding Midwestern, that I'm really proud of, which is I have coffee with every new person that starts. And have been doing that for years, even before the pandemic. Truth be told, we used to do it where, you'd have 20 new people, get them in a room together, you get bad pizza and crappy salads and go, hey, 2 truths and a lie, right? And so this is, when I meet with people now, it's typically 2 to 5 people whenever we have new people. And just to get to know them. And the only rules for that discussion, I don't care what agency you came from, and I don't care what discipline you work in. I just want to know about you. And it's been interesting how often that plays out in terms of when people, talk about things that are good here. And very personally, I love that. It energizes me because it allows me to talk about it allows me to talk about the agency. It gets me to know people on a human level. And plus, there's studies that have shown that the human mind can only retain 150 relationships, and we have 350 people. So the more connective tissue you have, the better. And especially trying to make that true because we look at it as we have 3 different audiences at Carmichael Lynch. We've got Minneapolis people, Philly people, and then remote people. And how do we make sure that all of them have the best CL experience they can when they're here?
Understood. So you're getting coffee with all of them when they first start. And that probably means so much to them to be talking to the CEO and getting that FaceTime with you to understand what the vision of the company is and just who you are as a human. I like that. Got it. Can you tell me a little bit about like the culture of Minneapolis? I don't think I've ever been, but compare that to New York, Chicago, and LA market. I know of a couple agencies that are powerhouses in Minneapolis. So something's going on there that needs to be uncovered. So how would you describe the agency culture in Minneapolis holistically, and what's going on there?
So there's a touch of a history lesson. I think the Minneapolis was a true powerhouse, but I think it's a little bit dated. So I think there was a writer strike back in the early 2000s that really hit hard on a lot of the businesses around here. It hit a lot of the production house and kind of the support services around agencies, but it still retains. It's one of the top markets in the country for advertising. So if you forgive me not running for mayor of Minneapolis, but it has the second number of theaters and museums only to New York in terms of creative culture. It has a tremendous amount of Fortune 500 companies here, everything from Target to Best Buy to General Mills to 3M to Medtronic to all different kinds of things. So the amount of intellectual fortitude that's here and brands, strong brands that are here has always been giant. So you have that plus a really strong creative community that's always been here. And whether that be in film, in art, in theater, all those different things attract a certain kind of mindset to it and creativity to it. And so it really does become a destination for people. And what's also nice that you hit on, there's several powerhouse agencies here, but there's also a lot of smaller startups that make this a thriving marketing community. And so for young people, it's a heck of an interesting place to come because it's not like you don't just come to one place. Like, for example, you don't just come here, let's say, well, hopefully just to work at Carmichael, but there's a slew of other agencies that you can go to. So it is one of those markets that has a bunch of different agencies. A thing that's super unique is about once every other month, there's a group of agency CEOs and presidents that get together and just talk and just kind of figure out how to help each other and help the city, which I think is really, really unique in this business. I remember when I was coming up, it wasn't always the fact that just your agency was doing good. Others had to do poorly. And we don't do it that way in Minneapolis. It really is. It's almost like osmosis. Like the more the city wins, the more business the city wins, the more talent comes in, and it just all begets itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the agency leaders here know that, get that, and I do think that's a pretty unique thing about the market.
I like that. Yeah, that makes sense. It seems to be working. So I wanted to get into now then how you broke into all this. So you alluded that you did not intend to break into advertising marketing, especially agencies. So can you run us through that story? When did you realize that you wanted to be a part of this stuff, or did you just get pulled in?
Well, let's see. I realized I wanted to be part of it when I had to make rent.
Yep.
So
that'll do it.
So when my wife and I moved up here, so like I mentioned, I was applying to nonprofits all over the place and couldn't get in anywhere. So the other thing was in grad school, I was a research assistant. So I started looking at those jobs and I found there was an old recruitment advertising agency. So again, think faxing stuff to the newspapers for want ads. That's what my job was. That was the first job. But then, I was doing all kinds of stuff around the apartment complex to make rent credit, and doing maintenance work to make rent credit. But then one day at this agency that I worked at, was called Ludlow Advertising. There was a woman there who was my boss, and she said, "Hey, you think a lot like account planning. Have you ever thought about getting into that?" And I said, "Nah, numbers it's not my thing." And she laughed at me and she goes, "No, you don't get it." So I dug into it. And I started going, holy crap, this is for me. This is what I want to do with my life. And so there were two places that in the country at the time, this is, mid 90s, that were doing it really great. Goodby. And then the other one was in town here, Fallon was doing it. And, so I had to figure out how to claw my way in there. So here's the funny part. This woman that was my boss. So get this, the woman that was my boss, her boyfriend lived next door to a senior person at Fallon. Mm-hmm. I gave her boyfriend's parents computer lessons and they wanted to give me $20 for my time. And I said, no. I don't want any of that. I just want an introduction to your neighbor. And that's how I got an introduction to someone at Fallon. And it kind of begot, one thing led to the next. And that's how I broke into the industry.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. I guess, when we talk about young people breaking in, there's a story that I tell the early days when we moved up here. So again, I applied everywhere, couldn't get a job. I'd done all the work around the apartment and I couldn't do anything anymore. So I went to a temp agency and also wanted to, try to get into advertising because I couldn't do public stuff. And I sat down, and I went to the Kinko's and I printed out my resume on a heavier stock paper and I was all proud of it and had the folder and the whole deal. And I remember the recruiter, the temp agency guy, sat across from me and he said, "You're dumb. You were an idiot to ever leave Missouri. You should have moved back there. You're never going to break into this business. You're never going to find a job here. The single biggest mistake you made was ever moving up here. The best thing I can tell you is to move back."
Oh my goodness.
I remember closing up my little folder and walking out and I started crying. And, the only thing that I regret to this day is that I should have kept that asshole's business card.
Yeah. Right. Oh man, that's got to light a fire though after the dust settles for sure. Maybe that's his tactic. Maybe I should tell aspiring advertisers you'll never do it, and then they'll all have that vengeance and chip on the shoulder. They can blame me.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And do you think that was because of at the time, the Minneapolis, like the Fallons and the Carmichael Lynches at the time in Minneapolis were just really hard to get into? Why do you think he said that?
Oh, I think probably because I didn't know anybody, didn't have any connections, didn't know the market, all the rest of it. that was kind of during the heyday of most of the agencies. So, no idea why. No
Mm.
idea why. Yeah, and that was the other thing. There was no rationale or why they said anything like that. He just kind of jumped right into, "You're dumb."
So then how do you react to that? How did you bounce back after you heard that?
Well, I tell you, you mentioned the idea of lighting a fire. The moment I started digging into account planning and brand planning and strategy, that lit my fire. I'm like,
Mm.
no, 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 this is what I want to do. Before I was just, before I was looking for a job, then I started looking for a career. And
Mhm.
that became kind of the switch. It's one of those things. If I'm incredibly thick-headed and stubborn and competitive. And so in some ways, to your point, tell me not to do something and I'll go do it.
Right.
So, but like once I made the switch from like, no, 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 this is my career, not just a job. That's what really got things going.
I love that because I think you're investing and you're doing more research with more intent, and you have that focus, which is like what we try to do every episode. Is the first step to getting a job in advertising is knowing what role you want and where you can see yourself, knowing yourself and knowing the role. It's nerding up. So that's why I love talking and doing these podcasts, because it helps them nerd up. And then what then would you say should people look into now? If let's say they a strategist today
Yeah.
or an aspiring strategist today comes as actualization, what should they study? How should they learn and nerd up even further? Resources that you might recommend that strategists check out today.
So I think uh, this might be a little bit of a different kind of answer. I think don't nerd up on advertising.
Mm.
Nerd up on something else. So there's an old mentor of mine said once, you have to be really interested in something in order to be interesting. And I thought that was a really kind of like, to me, that really landed. So for example, if I'm interviewing or talking with a young strategist and they can give me kind of a history of advertising, sure, fine. It's common ground. We all know that. But if it's like, for example, I am really into how classic art influences modern music today. Like, holy crap, that's super interesting, right? So it almost becomes a function of, if you are doing something outside of advertising that you're super into, it shows how deep you can go. It shows how you think about things. It shows how you put different pieces together. And that to me is a sign of like, cool. If you can go deep on something like that, then I can put any brand in front of you, any problem in front of you. And it almost shows how you can think as opposed to that you can do history. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, for
Okay.
sure, for sure. So then, yeah, like what would you would want to have those conversations about their passions outside of advertising? This is where I recommend to the listeners, like, start that blog about whatever that subculture, that niche, that microculture is, or create videos, or do a docuseries. Have something attached to it that you can put onto a website. Just the next little step, so it's easier to showcase, because now everything's a link. Recruiter's first step is to review a link, unless you meet in person or you listen to this podcast, then you can have direct conversations. But I like to have them pursue like a blog or some sort of content around that niche. I think that's what would be my add on to that.
Here's you mentioned kind of, this was I guess a couple of years ago, strategist who was kind of mid-level. He got caught up in an account loss and he got fired. And then he drove Uber for a while, and he turned that into an anthropology study of the different people that he met, and he wrote about it.
Perfect.
Right. And it was like, holy crap, that's so interesting.
Perfect.
Now, again, because you're interested in something, you have an interesting conversation. Right. I mean, and think about how much that separates, like, versus, hey, I was at this agency working on this account, we lost it, and so I'm out of a job. Cool. What have you done? Well, I've been looking for a job. Versus, yeah, I'm out of work, but you know what? I'm driving Uber and I'm meeting all these people, and I'm actually trying to figure out how people make decisions on blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh my gosh, who do you want to talk to more? Right.
Yep. Yep. Well, that's a strategist for sure. I mean, that's a great way to do it. So then tell me about your first job then. So when you broke in, was it difficult after you had those conversations, after you met the friends, the computer lessons, the networking, finessing there? How did those conversations go to weave your way into that first job?
The first job, yeah, it was hard and was difficult in that what we tried to do was, It's funny. I was so focused on getting into account planning and brand planning that I uh, was at the exclusion of other things, which I didn't think about at the time, but it was actually a reason that was really good to do. Because, for example, when I had my first round of interviews at Fallon, it turns out I was talking to the head of account management, and she said, "Would you ever consider a job in account management?" And I said, "No, never. I want to be a planner." Only in hindsight did I realize, how much of a rake I stepped on at the time. But at the same time, it also said, no, 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 this guy wants to do this thing. And, I do believe that it is an important thing when, as you've got your first interview, as you break into something, don't walk into it and go, I just want a job in anything. Nope. Have a point of view. I want to do this. I want to do that. And just kind of get after it. That to me it shows you've done your homework. It shows you're committed. And it also does that difference between a job versus a career.
I love that. I've blogged about that. The first question I ask everybody is, what job do you want and why? And if they say I could be an art director or a copywriter, I'm like, we got to do some work here, because now it tells me you're not focused. You're probably not good at either. To be transparent with all the listeners, I can be, because they know me. Yeah, I love that. And I like that you kind of, you decline the account management function, because you might have been able to break into that, but who knows where your career would be. I'm sure we'd get to the same end, but it might have taken longer, a little bit more windy. Maybe you would have backed out of advertising. Who knows? But knowing that you wanted to be in account planning and you pursued that, I love that. Got it. So you ended up then, where did you start then? This was at Fallon?
Yeah, I started at Fallon, was there for a number of years, and then I set off from there with a friend who left, and we started our own agency in 2001. And that was, if anyone has the opportunity to try it, do it. And here's the thing, we had an amazing 4-year run, and then we failed. But it was probably the best 4 years, the biggest learning I've ever, all the different things. I look back at that so fondly, and the friendships we made there were just amazing. Yeah. So that startup thing is a pretty cool thing. And if you can, give it a go. Not just working at one, but actually starting it. There's a difference between when, every single time you have to make payroll, you look at the world differently. And I think when you've got to make payroll, people that are there trusting you, I guess I never thought about it this way before, but I think that experience probably made me a better leader moving forward, because it was way personal. It was almost intimate in terms of what we knew about each other. We were so young and dumb. We had, literally we all had young kids. And so we had babies crawling around with crappy diapers and dogs running around as we're on conference calls trying to get things done. Right. And then, we just, ran out of luck. 2 of our top clients fired us, and it was something we couldn't recover from.
Yeah.
Then away you go. And so from there, I then went to Carmichael, was there for a couple of years, and left that to go run a digital shop for a while, and then ended up coming back. And it's been 13 odd years since I've been back.
I can't believe that. Doing that startup agency, with people and employing people with children and lives, and like that's like, I'm doing this with breaking entering just with my buddy who's also mid-20s with no kids and no wife or anything like that. So it's like, if we fail, it's like no big deal. We sleep on the street for a couple weeks. Like, it's like kind of low risk. Like, we'll figure it out. But man, I have so much respect for that risk tolerance, and it seems so incredible. Do you actually think that people should try to start something up? Like, because you knew at the end you could easily jump into an agency, right? Because you were even more hireable.
I think I think if the opportunity presents itself, I think people should have a really hard look at it. And that fear of failure, hey, I totally get it. But at the same time, if you've tried and started something, you are light years ahead of your peers if you've tried something, right? Because just, again, think about the interview conversation you can have versus, hey, here's my portfolio of stuff I've done for 5 years, versus, hey, no, starting an agency, and here, you can talk to the person you're interviewing with. Hey, tell me about how you're dealing with your landlord or tenant improvement dollars, or how have you dealt with healthcare increases and da, da, da. All of a sudden you're like, holy crap! You realize just the breadth of your knowledge. It just expands your frame of reference. And guess what? If it's good for an interviewer, then imagine when you're talking to clients, you can say, oh, you know what? Yeah, much smaller scale, but we had a distribution issue with our da 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 versus, hey, did you see the latest One Show Pencil Awards? Right. And no,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, I love pencils.
Of
Yeah.
course, of course. No, I totally understand. I love it. And for the listeners today, it's like it doesn't have to be a full service agency, but it could be you and your friend, or it could be you're doing you. Well, I actually see a lot of people doing like fashion design and like aspiring art directors that have these passion projects that can be profitable with the rise of social media and TikTok and TikTok shop. Like, there's no reason. Like, I sometimes talk to these aspiring advertising professionals and I ask them, I see their projects. I'm like, do you actually want to be in advertising or do you want to be an entrepreneur? And then a light clicks to them like, well, I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm like, then go for it. Like, it seems like you're making sales and you have a brand and you have art direction skills. You know, you did some copy on the website. You got some UX skills. Try it out. Then agencies will always be there and you can
So
go and
we
try it.
do a thing internally every year. We give, I think it's $5,000 and a couple extra days off. We call it our founders grant. And so think internal GoFundMe thing, right? As we've been doing that for years because again, people have their outside passions and hobbies and everyone's an entrepreneur at heart. And we look at it as, hey, you know what? Our company was started by an entrepreneur. Someone took a risk and did this. So we love the idea of having people that have outside passions. Cause again, if you have outside passions, you're more of an interesting person. And some of the things that people have come and it's amazing. I love every year reviewing the submissions. And so there's a few of us that go through them and just some of the submissions are absolutely amazing and the work that gets put out for it. And it's cool too, because then you have all your peers celebrating that you have this entrepreneurial spirit, that you're doing a thing and everybody kind of gets behind you. And it almost becomes like at times an after school project about, hey, if you've got a brand, you got a thing. We've got people in the PR space that can function as media relations or publicists going, hey, I've got a couple extra hours. Can I throw down to help your thing go? Right. Like that's great stuff.
Oh my gosh. I love that. I mean, especially with my story, like that means so much. I would so appreciate that if I was working there. I think that's phenomenal because you want a culture of makers. You want people to be entrepreneurial for the clients that you have and coming up with ideas. Like that makes so much sense then. If you're doing stuff like that, it makes sense that you're getting these culture awards and I could see that playing out. So that's really awesome. Um, I'm curious now then. So as a role as CEO, what's the vision for the next couple of years, or at least 2025? Like, what are some of those big goals that you have as we're approaching end of the year right now? Any light that you can shed on that?
Sure. We look at, I go back to our positioning, which is come together, stand apart. So we're trying to bring the best disciplines together. Our mission is to use our collective creativity for the world's most ambitious brands. I'll tell you personally, for me, the brands that are oftentimes the most fun are in categories that are commodities where all the other, where all your other competitors are at parity and where you need marketing and messaging and advertising and events and activations to stand apart. That really it is, those are the kind of things that desperately need marketing, and positioning. So those are the ones that I absolutely love. If I look at the next couple of years, our goal is to make famous work. I think we are a creatively driven agency. We have a house full of brands that we are incredibly proud of. And we're always looking, obviously, like in this business, to pitch the next big thing. But oftentimes too, I believe that you have long-term relationships build confidence. And the more confidence you have, the more likely you can come up with an idea or a media plan or a PR idea or a design identity that can push even further. And that's, I think, when things get really exciting. So I hope to have a collection of those things in the next couple of years. Now, will everything we do be that way? No. But if we can have a couple highlights that way, I think it really becomes important for us to focus on that.
Gotcha. Love that. Love that. And if you were to talk to somebody just breaking into the industry today, maybe in account planning, they're just getting they're starting their first day next beginning of 2025. what would you tell them on that coffee chat? Welcome them to Carmichael Lynch or just the industry in general for account planning. What would you tell them?
Sure. Well, one thing I always end with and talk about our culture is that in a word, we are additive. So every single person that comes here, I want them to add to the culture. And in a bit of a strategy move, then the inverse is also true. The thing you should never do here is blend in. Blending in is bad. So always figure out a way to make us better. For the industry overall, I would say, I think it's an incredibly exciting time to be in advertising. And we are an industry more than any other industry that is so self-loathing and so we hate ourselves, we hate each other, we hate the industry. And we always talk about the downfall of advertising or AI is going to destroy everything or all those different things. The flip is so much of it just comes down to how you look at the world. Are you going to look at all these new tools, all these new inventions, all this new way of communicating as an opportunity or as a threat? To me, it's an incredible opportunity. And on top of that, in the ad space, I think we also look at it from a point of view of clients. It's hard to be a client. Think about all the different things that you need to know about, particularly in something like media or tech or MarTech or any of those things. There's no way you can know all those. So clients are looking for partners to help them guide them through it. And particularly I'd offer up as a strategist, you're the person that's going to help shepherd someone through things. So, hell, if I were starting off my career again, I'd probably do planning again.
Love it. Love it. How can people reach out or learn more about Carmichael Lynch? Is there an internship opportunity coming up soon? Who should they talk to? How can they learn more and break into Carmichael Lynch?
Sure. We do have an internship program that I think always opens up early in the year, I think, but otherwise just check the site. Otherwise, if someone wants to connect with me, LinkedIn is probably the easiest. I would share with you, I got into Instagram late and I've kept it pure. So it's only my interest. So I'm not really on it in a big way.
All good. All good.
But yeah, no, LinkedIn is probably the single best way. And, we're a group that's always happy to talk to people, even if we're not in the process of hiring. My personal goal is for each department to know the next 3 people they want to hire.
Oh, nice. Got it. Wonderful. Well, this is fantastic, Marcus. Thank you so much for coming on. I wish you all the best as we head into the new year. I'm sure you guys will be crushing it. I can't wait to follow along. If there's anything you need from Breaking Entering, let us know. We're here to help too.
All right. Appreciate you. Really appreciate the time and the conversation.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.